All right, we should hopefully be live for this week's episode of the Safely Extreme podcast, where we discuss game design and industry topics. I am, of course, Josh Beiser from Game Wisdom, and joining me is my host, or my co-host from Nexus Games, Sharky. How are you doing?
I'm your host, co-host.
Mm-hmm.
We're both kind of host and we're both kind of co-host.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Safely Extreme?
Maybe.
Hello, everybody. I'm doing good.
Did the notification go out?
I know your bot went out.
So I'm not seeing anything on YouTube side.
I think I've seen something on YouTube side, but I don't know. Yeah, went out 5 minutes ago.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we get people for tonight. But, oh, hey, Soren.
You mean today?
Yeah. Well, it'll be probably tonight by the time we finish. But
depends on how long we go. I mean, we could definitely go a long time on this one, I think.
Mm-hmm. Which is perfect. It's all about time wasting. But
yeah.
It is this week for the week of March 7th, 2021. This week is my final week to work on the fourth book on horror design. So it is almost done. I have almost like 1.5 chapters left to write. Hello, I'm a Bucks. And just about there, I finally can start seeing the end of it. And then I just gotta get all the images organized. You know, just adding masochism there.
Yeah. Well, he's a box, you're a masochist, and I'm a shark.
There, sounds like a joke, or the beginning of a joke there.
I mean, we can certainly go there.
One thing that I was thinking about, for those of you watching this live recorded, is maybe having a new Patreon incentive for like a monthly game key giveaway with all like the bundle keys I've gotten, as another way of giving an incentive for doing the Patreon and stuff like that. Let me know what everyone thinks on that topic, because with my Humble Bundle purchase, I've gotten a lot more keys and all those Finagle bundles, just like filling up my library of duplicate keys there. You know, I don't buy any games, right, Shark?
Only a couple.
Mm-hmm. So, how is everything going with you this week?
Things are, I mean, right now, my game is still going through development hell, sadly. But, I mean, there's a potential light at part of one side of the tunnel. I just have to, get there and see if it's an actual real light, and then try to light the other part of the tunnel.
Well, good luck with that.
Thanks. I certainly need it.
So, for what's happening over here, we are running out of developer casts. Like, I've got one recorded for this Friday. We need to get some more developers on. Everyone seems to have disappeared, because of the whole everybody reopening around here.
Yeah, maybe I'll come on for a developer cast.
But you don't work on any games, right?
No, I've never worked on a game before. Ever.
But if you are a developer working on an upcoming game or want to talk game design, we are always looking for guests. I I bug Edmund McMillan again. We'll see if he has any free time.
I've never worked on a game or talked about it, or never wanted to talk about a game before.
But usually this is a point where we talk about what games we've played. But I think this week we've both been playing the same game with Loop Hero.
Yeah, what game? I've never heard of that game. Never played that game before. Certainly not a good several hours on Steam. Actually, it's not just Loop Hero that we've been playing. It's also been Hadean Tactics. Is that how you say it? Hadean Tactics?
I don't know. Hadean
Tactics?
Hadean
Tactics.
Yeah, but we've been really enjoying that one. And trying to figure out where that one is going to go in terms of its design. Because we had the developer on, we were grilling them while I was breaking his game.
You talking about Adian?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. But you still need to get him in for a cast.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully a live one.
Yep, I hope so. And speaking about Loop Hero, just got an update too, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, Loop Hero's been getting updates daily, and Hadian Tactics seems to be getting like twice a day updates.
Mm-hmm.
Or days anyway.
Oh yes, and that is very important, especially for Hadian Tactics, with it being in early access. Mm-hmm. Loop Hero, I think that's just going to be like kind of like the wall of reception coming about people leaving bug reports and feedback.
Mm.
Let's see. The other game that I'm excited about, Cerulean Ultimate, is coming out this week, and I'll be probably playing more of that on stream. That's basically, again, like, you know, super min-max Pokemon. Like, if you ever thought Pokemon could use more depth, systems, and mechanics, that's what Cerulean is.
Yeah, I was there when you played it live, but I wasn't paying super close attention, and it did look like a RPG Maker game.
Apparently it was made in Game Maker.
They just don't have the best of art aesthetics. I need to go back and I've been meaning to. I got it, you know, bookmarked and everything to go back and watch it in detail so I can actually fully examine it.
Mm-hmm. And what was the other game I just saw on my list? Got a few more press keys for our Wednesday show. And this week I did play Total War 3 Kingdoms for the first time. And that one will probably frame a major discussion about tutorial design and onboarding on a future cast.
Yeah, I mean, nobody needs a tutorial.
Mm-mm.
I mean, you can just, you know, use BioWare magic and just all of a sudden know everything you need to know. You know, I mean, you don't need to go to school either. Just use BioWare magic. You know?
I can just use osmosis. If I put my hand on the screen while a game is playing, I'll immediately learn everything there is about it.
Yeah, you know, it's called game whispering. You just, you know, put your hand on there and just
game sponge.
You know, it just sucks it up. You know, that's all you gotta do.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, some big news. I think actually just dropped like 20 minutes before we were starting. I was looking on Gamasutra, or somebody just mentioned that Germany has officially banned loot boxes. I think for minors in their games.
Yeah, but how do they define it? It's a question.
Of course, that is the very big question. I'm not seeing anything new. Again, it's a Sunday afternoon, so I'm sure more places will pick it up by tomorrow.
Because if they banned it in the same way America was trying to ban them, then, you know, that's very bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if they did it a lot similar to the other countries, then that's good.
Sounds like that Simpsons joke. Oh, that's good. That's bad from the Halloween episode.
Yeah, I didn't see that
one. One thing, like, this is actually really topical for our discussion tonight. Marvel's Avengers game, you know, that game that Shark and I both loved when we played it last year.
Oh yeah, that was the best game of the year.
Well, apparently it's going to get better because they decided to make the grind even grindier in terms of trying to get to max level in that game. They're not changing the content. They're just increasing the amount of experience required.
Oh yeah, that's how you take a game that was really grindy, had no variety, and make it better. Just, you know, make it longer. Because again, the only thing that matters is the length of a game, not the content inside of it. You know, if you have, you know, a screen that, you know, plays, you know, gray screen that plays a fart sound for every 3 seconds randomly, you know, within that 3 seconds, you know, like if it just does it for 5 minutes kind of thing, that's not good enough. You know, you got to extend it, you know, and make it where those random fart sounds are like every 5 seconds, and then break it out and make it go for like 20 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Although on the side note, that might actually be hilarious because, like, You just have this game run in the background, and then all of a sudden people hear farting sounds.
Yeah, so their explanation is perhaps one of the worst and lamest ones. Probably up there with Ubisoft's, women are hard to animate. That's why we don't include female characters in our Assassin's Creed games.
Uh-huh.
So here is their explanation. And this is the quote from the publisher. In most RPGs, the amount of XP you need to level up increases as you gain levels in a curve, but our system is a straight line. One thing, I don't know what that means exactly. This has led to pacing issues, such as skill points currently being rewarded too fast. There's another, a soul-leaving body moment, which may be confusing and overwhelming to newer players. We want each decision to invest in a skill or homework to be more meaningful.
Yeah, newer players are going to be in the higher levels where it would be confusing.
Yeah. And you don't want people to feel rewarded too fast in a game.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like a whole bunch of PR speak right here.
You want that endorphin push to happen, 80 hours after you start playing.
The real game starts at 80 hours.
Mm-hmm. And right now, I can just imagine the Genshin Impact developers and every gacha developer laughing their butts off at Square Enix for that sentence.
Yeah.
Because every gacha game is about getting you hooked within minutes, not padding things out, at least along those lines.
Yeah, but the difference is Squeenix is getting money up front, and the gacha games and such are not.
I don't understand the whole you level up in a straight line. That
I think what they mean is that basically, in my last game, the old word of the day, Chromasia, how every time you would level up, it would take you, maybe 10 EXP to get to level 1, 15 EXP to get to level 2, 20 EXP to get to level 3, and such on. I think they have it set to where every level is 10 EXP.
Well, one, that would be incredibly stupid, and two, that makes no damn sense.
Yeah, welcome to Squeenix, apparently, because apparently that's what they're admitting to doing. Which the question is does the enemies do the same thing, or do they get progressively more EXP? Do we get 1 EXP for every enemy, no matter what enemy it is, and then you just, and then it just gets insanely grindy? Or does the EXP actually go up with the enemies? Or the question is did they originally have it where the enemies kept on giving more EXP as you went up, and the levels did not? So at first you're playing and you're getting every level is 100 EXP to get to it, but the first enemies are 1 EXP, but by the time you get farther in, you're getting 500 EXP, and you're just kill one enemy and you gain 5 levels. I mean, is that what they? What kind of train wreck did they originally have?
Yeah, I don't know.
And what kind of train wreck did they swap to, is the question.
Yeah, but it's good that in the blog post they warn players to quickly rush through the game to avoid how much of a grind it's going to be after it gets patched.
Oh, yeah.
You
better hurry up and get the good part of the game, because it's not going to be there for much longer.
That is always a wise game dev decision. Make a decision that you know is bad, and it's so bad you have to warn people. Uh-oh. El Gordo is defected.
He turned traitor, apparently.
He's sus.
He's very sus.
But it's good when you make a decision that you know is bad, and then you have to warn people about your bad decision.
You don't want to do that. Spy check. Endorphins.
But it really is a good point to talk about our major topic for today, and that is avoiding wasting the player's time. And this is one that something tells me we are going to go kind of long and we probably won't hit every aspect of this. So if there is any parts of this you want us to elaborate on in a future show, let us know in the comments. But time wasting has been probably one of the major points of game development or game design, especially during the arcade era, when games are designed to be brutally difficult in order to push the amount of time needed to be spent on them. And, oh, that's not good, Lord. You may go deaf if you hear my voice in stereo there. But time wasting or trying to pad out a game's length was one of the major points as we saw kind of the growth of the home console market in the late 80s through to about like the mid 90s, probably we could say PlayStation 1 and 64 era is when things started to become kind of more standardized. But for many people who don't know, the 90s or like 90s era RPGs were pretty much celebrated for their length. If an RPG didn't have at least 80 hours, it wasn't an RPG kind of design.
No, actually, generally they're 40-hour games with, for the base story, and then a lot more after that.
And don't forget having to grind for certain encounters, and again, the super post-boss optional fight that does like 99999 damage to you kind of thing.
You're now talking about Disgaea, which is the king of linked in games.
I'm also talking about Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, where the final super optional boss was so difficult that you basically had to build exactly 3 party members, do the fight in a turn-by-turn like guide of what skills to use in order to manipulate the AI to stand a chance of actually beating that fight. And the boss would hit you with an attack that was higher than your actual max health pool. So it would always be a one-shot.
Dang.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Wouldn't Alien Isolation be considered AAA? It was made by Gearbox. No, it was made by Total Assembly, or Creative Assembly.
I think anything with the Aliens franchise would be AAA.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think any indie can afford an Aliens license.
But the idea of time wasting or trying to pad out a game's length has certainly seen new life or new dead time over the last decade with the rise of live service games, more inclusions of mobile and gacha mechanics, the ever big push of the open world design trend. We've joked about open world design many times here.
Yeah, I want to make one clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Extending the length of a game isn't necessarily bad.
Mm-hmm.
There are good ways and bad ways to do it. For example, a roguelike is the quintessential of extended a game time because you do a single playthrough, you get some upgrades kind of thing, you go back and you do it again over and over and over again. And that is a really fun gameplay loop if you're into that kind of genre.
Mm-hmm.
And but you have to have meaningful upgrades, meaningful stuff.
The game must be designed for it.
Yeah, you have to have everything in place for it.
Yeah.
With my last game, the old word of the day, we had a new game plus system, bunch of different endings and everything, level scaling systems and all this other stuff to get you to play, get an ending, restart, play, get an ending, restart, play, get an ending, restart kind of thing to extend that gameplay loop because, and then another thing is we made the second 3, map 1 through 10 ended up also being maps 11 through 20. We reused the actual core map with completely new enemy layouts and everything, and it was all story justified because you needed to go back after you learned something. And then, then the final five levels are different kind of thing. Like, there are good ways to do it, but then there's bad ways to do it. And, one bad way to do it is just put excessively long animations in there. Just, put in animations that you spend like 3 seconds playing, and then spend 10 minutes watching animations to just get another 3 seconds of gameplay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, and speaking about animations, we can see, this is one of the things I talk about, this idea of dead time, where it's time playing the game where literally the player has no input other than sitting there and waiting for seconds to tick by. So this could be having no choice but waiting for an in-game timer to move forward, or in the older days, waiting for, door opening animations. If you remember Resident Evil, where that was originally used as a loading mechanism. But for today's systems, it's you just literally waiting 3 seconds every time you open up a door before you can do anything. And
yeah, it's artificial loading.
Yeah. Or the ever popular, you have to ride an elevator ride for however long it takes for our game to load the next section. It could be a 5-second elevator ride. It could be a 40-second elevator ride.
Yeah. And, I mean, that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how you use it. You've got to use it in such a way that is not wasting the player's time. You need to do things as quickly and as entertaining as possible. You don't want dead time.
Mm-hmm. And getting back to your point about, the Metal Gear Solid, getting back to the discussion about roguelikes, this is, I think, one thing when I see people say, games need to be shorter, and that's all they say, they tend not to grasp, I think, as we've said, what is a good way to lengthen a game? Because a roguelike, and I guess this will be, say, the extreme, a roguelike is both short and long at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
An individual run can be 30 minutes to an hour. The overall play time could be several hundred hours, or even more than that if the procedural generation is on point.
Yeah. It could be even shorter than that if you don't get good.
Mm-hmm. Or you get too good and you beat the entire game on your first run without even realizing it.
Mm-hmm. But, like my current game, the current word of the day, Neon Continuum, the game itself is probably like 5 minutes, but you just play it over and over again. Because it's a CCD. You're playing one match, and that's the game right there.
Yep, and right there with multiplayer-based games is another very big point about wasting time or avoiding that. That one of the reasons why multiplayer really blew up over the last decade, one, because of the growth of internet online infrastructures. Oh, I forgot to put that in, yeah. I'll add that as a multitasking, which is another way of saving time. But besides multiplayer architecture, it was also about this idea of keeping people or keeping player retention for as long as possible. And that is how you avoid time wasting. Because you want the player to feel like they are invested in this game. They don't want to feel like they're being bored or they're waiting for, the good stuff to start. And what makes multiplayer design work so well is that it is a very short but very replayable core gameplay loop. As Shark just said with Neon Continuum, that a match can last 5 minutes. Is that the end of your game? No, because you can play another 5 minutes, and another 5 minutes, and you repeat that with different content. And this gets at the heart of what's the difference between a roguelike that can be played for 30, 50, 80 hours, and padding out a game for 30, 50, 80 hours, like, an open world title. Because you're still doing the same thing in a open world game. There's no variance to it. But in a roguelike, you can keep playing that over and over again, or a multiplayer game, and get more content on 5 minutes. There we go.
Yeah, but I do want to get to the point of that guy's comment about how he said games need to be shorter. In general, yes, they do. Because there are so many games that really bloat their games out. And with grinding, like Marvel's Avengers.
Mm-hmm. And we we should also clarify really fast that game length today does not equal quality anymore. Like we said, like 20, 30 years ago, if your game hit at least 30, 40 hours, people were going to love it. Today, just saying that there's 700 hours in my game or 300 puzzles doesn't automatically make your game, get a 9 out of 10.
Yeah. I don't think cutscenes necessarily need to be shorter, but they certainly could be, depending on the cutscene. Because, like, as long as the cutscene is not wasting the player's time. There's a difference between a cutscene wasting a player's time and a cutscene, giving you relevant information. Because, like, if you're learning who killed who and, or what the mystery is, then that's good. But, if you're talking about, if the characters are talking about what they had for breakfast yesterday and what they're going to do for brunch, kind of thing, and then what they're going to do for lunch after that, and then what they're going to do for supper, and then what they're going to do for a midnight snack, and then what they're going to do for a midnight snack when they're sleeping, kind of thing, and then they're going on to talking about the perfume that's in the candle, kind of thing, and then they're talking about
but don't
all
forget
the other stuff that I'm sitting here wasting your time on. Then you're wasting the player's time.
Yeah, but don't forget that they have to also talk one at a time with like a 20-second delay between each person's conversation or each person's part.
Oh, yeah.
Because that just drives me crazy. And there's probably a topic about, doing really good cutscenes or saying really good dialogue in games that we could talk about in a future piece. But yeah, like, that just drives me crazy. When there's that delay, so it's just like, okay, I'm going to say my part. 3 seconds later, okay, I'm going to say my part now. And
okay, let's do this, Josh. Let's do it. Real time. Hello, Josh.
Hello, Shark.
How are you?
If we do this, people are going to start cutting all the stop watching the stream. But yeah, it is, again, anything that you can do, and this is one of the things about when we talk about avoiding time-wasting mechanics. Like, this is where quality of life and UI UX. Exactly, thank you, Juan. We need to start saying that on our show.
I thought they were brought to you by Red Shadow Legends.
Maybe. But UI UX is a very big aspect of this, at least in the kind of like, in the smaller scope. Like, we can talk about time wasting in small and large aspects. Large will be more along the systems of the game, while on the smaller side, this is where UI and UX comes in. As we said earlier, with the infamous, having to wait for doors to open. Imagine every time you wanted to open up your inventory in RPG, you had to wait 30 seconds for your character to slowly, take off his backpack, put it on the ground, start, unstrapping the buttons, reaching in, and then the actual UI loads.
Yeah. I know I was looking at a game today that I'm actually interested in, but, like, there's so much player wasted time. I can tell that just from like the first few seconds of gameplay kind of thing. And it's this Gundam game where it's a tactical RPG where, you go around killing stuff like you do normally in tactical RPGs kind of thing.
I may have that on my wish list.
And basically what happens is when you shoot and kill an enemy, it takes like a few seconds, like with your normal, tactical RPG. You think of where you're going to move, you move, and then you hit the button, kind of thing. But when you hit the firing button to kill them, kind of thing, then probably took you like, depending on how good you are at tactical games, either like 3 seconds or 5 minutes, kind of thing, to figure out where you're going to move. But once you figure that out, kind of thing, and you do that, then you hit that button, and it plays this like 30 or 40 second cutscene of the Gundam flying in, really fast, bird fighting, and then just boom, fires. And it's like, oh my god, do you have to wait through that every single dang enemy you kill? It's like, oh no.
Yeah. In XCOM, for instance, that every time you had the cinematic shot, it would take like 5 to 10 seconds for your character to slowly but surely aim their gun and then hit the enemy. And,
yeah, you're talking about on the Overwatch, right?
Yeah. And,
yeah, but like if you had like 8 characters on Overwatch, it would do them all at the same time. At least if they were all tracked on the same character anyway.
Yeah. And so many of those little time waster elements was put into XCOM 2 that there was a mod release for that's literally called Stop Wasting My Time that you can install in XCOM 2 to speed up a lot of those more annoying sections. And this is something that's very important to clarify for developers watching. When we're talking about kind of the short side of things in terms of wasting time, we're not talking about something that takes minutes. We're talking about seconds at a time. And
it could be minutes, too.
But it does lead to minutes, and that's the point. Because people will say, oh, what?
The thing is if you have an animation that plays, through a game, if somebody were to complete the game, if that animation plays 3,000 times, right? If it's just 1 second longer than it should be, kind of thing, 3,000 times 1 second equals what? What is that? 30 minutes of waste of time? No, that's longer than that. That's like 40 or 50, 60 minutes. So you could cut 1 second off of an animation and literally save somebody an hour off of your, an hour-ish off of, a, complete gameplay session of your game. And that is crazy how 1 second can make that much of a difference.
Oh yeah, and like as Shark just said, that these things that we're talking about may only be a second, 2 seconds, stuff like that. But when you have to understand that when someone's playing your game, they will be constantly exposed to this. And especially
or like 30 seconds when it comes to that Gundam game I found.
And something can be cute if it happens one time. Okay, I die, Mario does like his funny little, animation, you hear the music. Okay, that's cute. 80 times later, 100 times later, you're going to start that music, that little noise will start making your ears bleed as you hear it. And Mario is actually a really good example because the counterpoint to that is Super Meat Boy. When you die in Super Meat Boy, it is instantaneous. Within a millisecond, you're back to replaying the game. And that does not waste time, and it keeps the flow of the game going. Because when you have these time-wasting elements to it, it takes the player out of it, and it can actually mess with their rhythm. Like in the original Super Mario Bros., I believe if you die, it is about 5 to 6 seconds before you can actually take control over Mario again.
And, it's good to get players back into it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Because you don't, we talked about this in a previous cast, you don't want to punish players. You want to make the game fun and entertaining for the players. Which means you generally need to, stay away from padding for no reason. Like I know when I was making my first game, I was worried about the length kind of thing because there's the, stigma of all, RPGs and tactical RPGs and all that stuff need to be 40 hours long. And when I found out that the end time was like 20 hours kind of thing for a story play kind of thing, I was super worried because I was like, is that going to be long enough to keep people from not complaining kind of thing? And now with the remake, I'm wanting to shorten it up, because like I didn't specifically, lengthen out the game, other than reusing the maps kind of thing, which applied to the story kind of thing. And that was decided early on. But what I want to do is reduce the time of like animations, make them more polished and faster, and and make things happen a lot easier. Like right now, what happens when you have enemies attack is they move one at a time and then they attack. Move one at a time and attack. And in the remake, what I want to do is have them all move at once and then attack.
Yep. And you want your game to feel snappy. You want things to happen like very immediately. You want that kind of like tactile feel to it. You know, I hit this, it immediately happens.
Yeah. At the same time, I'm going to be adding in more cutscenes and more length in there to further develop the story. So, like, I'm adding more length, but I'm also taking out length. And I'm hoping, in the end, I can get it down to maybe a 12-hour game instead of 20.
You're lengthening it to shorten it, then. Or shortening it to lengthen it.
I'm adding more content and taking out things that are wasting players' time.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like to the Kaizo example, that one of the things that a lot of Kaizo developers do now is they just have a fast retry. So instead of waiting for Mario to, fall off the screen, just he gets hit, it immediately pops up, retry, go back to map.
Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say that all gameplay is a waste of time, because entertainment is not a waste of time, because the fact is if you don't have any entertainment, then you don't work productively. So, entertainment is not a waste of time, because entertainment is a saving of time, because while it may take half of your time out of your life, if you don't have it, then it makes all your productive time 20 times less productive, which actually is taking away, probably about 9/10 of your day. So would you rather have entertainment and lose half your day, or no entertainment and lose 9/10 of the day? Because people have sat there and screw around and sit there at the computer and everything for like 10 hours debating whether they want to look up a certain thing in their job, kind of thing, where when you had that entertainment part in there, you'll have that done in like 10 seconds, versus like an hour or so when you haven't had enough entertainment in your life.
Mm-hmm. And to Amir's point, we have seen some games that try to integrate the cutscene into the general action, or let the player kind of move around or do their own thing. Half-Life 2 would be a good example of that. That during some of those cutscenes, you're free to walk around, you're free to mess with things. The first Batman, Arkham Asylum, had points like that as well. That the player is still in control; they can still do things in it. Even like another really good example would be from God of War 2018, where the that like severed head that you kept with you would tell you stories while you're on your canoe. That whenever you get off the canoe to do something, he immediately stops the story and then he picks it right back up when you get back to it. So you don't have to worry about stopping what you're doing to listen to the story. It's always there basically to kind of break up the traveling sections.
Yeah, I mean, like, that can be useful, but it's not necessary, because it all depends on the game. If you don't have like a open world kind of exploring kind of thing, then you can't do that kind of thing. If you have like a RPG or something, or a tactical RPG, you pretty much have to stop it. And that's kind of the thing. But the point is in a point where you are stopping it kind of thing, you have to only give relevant, good information. No time wasting, no talking about what you had for breakfast kind of thing. Now, if this is just auto playing when you're breaking up sections and everything, you can time waste with what you had with breakfast during those sections, because it doesn't matter, because you're using that to just add more entertainment during the sections, rather than specifically trying to get points across.
Yep. And any way that you can keep the player focus on your game, you don't want them to zone out in this regard. Again, you can zone out, enter a flow state in a lot of games. But if it's just a case of here's 20 minutes of walking with nothing else to do, a lot of people are going to get really tired of that.
Mm-hmm. That gets into fast travel and such.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, if you have to walk all the way there and there's nothing entertaining to do, like, either nothing to do because enemies didn't respawn, or, maybe just busy work because the enemies respawned, kind of thing. If it's not some kind of new experience that is going to entertain the player, you're just wasting their time.
Mm-hmm. And I would argue that if the only way to experience your game is by using a fast travel system, then there's something wrong with the moment-to-moment gameplay of your title.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, this is one of the reasons why I really enjoyed something like Sunset Overdrive, that kept you constantly engaged with moving around. Whereas something like an Assassin's Creed game or some of the later ones, it's just like, okay, you see that point on your map 20 minutes away? Just start walking in that direction, or, take your camel, your horse.
Well, here's a question for you. What's that name of the game from Other Shark?
Vision Soft Reset?
Yeah. On that one, how did that work out on there? Because, I mean, weren't every time it was the same? When you redid the time?
Yes. The twist of that was you were trying to figure out what is the quote-unquote perfect run to get to the game's ending. And you needed to get more of those upgrades, which would then change how you move through the game on new loops.
Mm-hmm.
So things were changing as you were playing, because you could use your knowledge from a previous loop to do something faster. So there was that sense that things were growing and changing over the course of playing the game. Whereas something like with an open world game, it's just, here's 6 tasks, we're going to copy and paste them 100 times throughout the map.
Yeah. I mean, in Vision Soft Reset, basically what it was doing a speed run.
Mm-hmm.
But through time travel.
Yeah.
You got to speed run this game in 20 minutes. But, it's got like many hours of gameplay because you're going back and redoing stuff over and over.
Mm-hmm. It's the non-speedrunner speedrun game.
Yeah, kind of.
Mm-hmm. And
it'd be interesting to see somebody play it, as an actual speedrun with no time travel.
I don't know if that's even possible to do. Without
very minimum time travel.
And again, there is a point, and I think this is another thing that I wanted to bring up, that it's something that I worry about in the Game Design Deep Dive series, that good game design basically dictates your game should be as long as you can keep exploring your mechanics. So if you can create 20 original levels out of a single mechanic, make this 20 levels long. If it's 10 levels, make it 10. What you don't want to do is say, okay, here's this mechanic, I'm going to use it 300 times with very little variation, and surely people will sit through and play all 300 levels of my game.
Well, yeah, it needs more than that, because, like, it's not just how long can your gameplay last, how long can your art last, Are you going to see the assets so many times that you get tired of looking at them, because you don't want to get tired of looking at the same assets over and over again. So you have to get that to a point where you have enough variety for the enough time spent on those assets, so that they're not overwhelmed by too many of them. And of course, back to the thing we always say, you have to have your aesthetics on point.
Yeah. Something like, I was reading a book I got, a reverse game design on Super Mario World, where this one of my friends, Patrick, was talking about this. That with Super Mario World, Nintendo didn't escalate the difficulty curve. They didn't just repeat content. What they did was basically say, we're going to figure out as many different ways we can use the same toolbox, and we're going to make different levels around it. So
yeah, the big thing with Mario is they made a good toolbox to begin with. Same with Vision Soft Reset. You know, it wasn't just a jump and then that was it kind of thing. They had many different kinds of jumps without even counting power-ups kind of thing. They had many different kinds of jumps in Mario 1.
Oh, yes.
And people just think that it's a single jump, and you see game developers make that mistake.
Oh, God, yes.
To where they give you one single jump, and then they just make it go on for what seems like forever. Even though it's a lot shorter than Mario, the fact is it's a single jump, and instead of the toolbox of jumps that Mario has.
Yeah. So for those of you, like, I talked about this in the Game Design Deep Dive Platformer, so I'm going to try to use my hand here as an example. So when you hit the jump button, the character jumps the same height at the same speed every time. Without question, he's going to do the same exact thing. And the problem, now the good thing about this, it creates a uniform standard. The problem is that there's no thought process. Because I know every jump in your game must be balanced around this same exact jump height. Because if it's not, then the game's impossible. Some developers will have like kind of a very basic variable system. So if I tap jump, maybe he goes this high. If I hold it down, he goes this high. If I keep holding down the jump button, we've seen this with a lot of 16-bit platformers, that you'll hit the jump height, and then you'll kind of like, not exactly hover, but it will take a little longer for your character to descend. Kind of like you're like squeezing out, the hang time. You're kind of squeezing out that jump. Now, conversely, in that game when I played that ASCII the Cat game, which I still will never know why it's called ASCII, what they did in that one is they threw all the jumps in without any bounds. So basically, if I tap jump, he will jump that high. I don't know if you could see that on my camera, like this high. And there's so much variable in that it becomes impossible for the player to make a informed jump about that. And yeah.
But how did Mario do their jumps?
Mario had like several set jumps. So if I tap A, he will jump this high. If I hold it for a second, he will jump this high. If I hold it all the way down through the length of the jump, he may jump this high. So again, there are multiple jumps in that single push of the A button. And like what you said a minute ago, the problem that a lot of indie developers and first-time developers make is they think platformer just means I just jump the same way for 50 hours of this game. No.
And
And
that's not how it works. Not the right way anyway.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough variability in there that, you know, it's like trying to build a house with a hammer and only a hammer. You ain't got no nails, you ain't got no wood, you ain't got no saws, nothing. You're just doing everything with a hammer. You know, that does not work. You know.
Yeah.
You need, you know, when you put in saws, hammers, glue guns, all kinds of other stuff. When you have a full working toolbox, then you can make
anything you want.
A lot better. You can get a lot more length out of there because, I mean, when you just have a hammer, let's just say you have a hammer and nails. All you can do is nail things together. That is all you can do. And that's going to get boring after a very, very short time, where if you can nail stuff together, cut boards, lay out everything, have, your squares and everything, make square structures and everything.
You could make a house. It's not going to be really
build a house rather than just, tack a for sale sign on a, telephone pole, which is illegal in many places, or a yard sale sign, kind of thing.
And Foreign brought up the committed jumping design, where once you jump, you have no control over your character. Castlevania, Ghosts and Goblins, and so many other examples, and that gets boring. Because basically, once you hit that jump button, you have no more input. And again, that kind of stuff gets very repetitive. And for those of you who want to see like the difference in kind of variable jumping, look at like when I played ASCII the Cat versus Super Meat Boy. Super Meat Boy features almost the exact same kind of system in terms of its variable jumping, but it's more kind of like the realistic or the like the real-time physics of how Meat Boy jumps, that it feels more natural. It feels better in your hand.
Yeah, I believe Meat Boy uses simulated physics. But it's not just basic simulated physics.
Mm-hmm. It's taking in like the momentum and the velocity of Meat Boy as he's moving around.
Yeah, it's running simulated physics along the lines of Sonic rather than the lines of Mario.
Yeah, and the N series, N++ by MetaNet, that they also go along those lines.
There's many different ways to simulate physics, but the Sonic and the Meat Boy are certainly a lot heavier in the simulation department than like a Mario would be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we maybe get a little bit off topic talking about platformers. I could talk about platform for the next 2 hours. That's not my problem here.
Have you ever played a platformer?
No, I didn't write any books about it either, or filled with gas. But getting back to kind of what started this point off, that your mechanics and your systems dictate the length of your game. Now, of course, this equation gets kind of thrown out the window when we start talking about story elements. Because a lot of people will happily sit through the same repetitive content if the story engages them, as we've seen with plenty of RPGs.
Yeah, the difference is engaging cutscenes versus unengaging cutscenes.
Oh, yes.
Because when you have, like I said before, a cutscene that is talking about what you're going to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and whatnot that goes on for an hour versus, a 10-minute cutscene that has, somebody dying. We're rushing to find out what the heck is going on. Things are all shrouded in mystery. There's a bloody knife somewhere, and we find out that one of the windows are broken, and we look out the window, and there's a few hints of stuff, and then you go out there and look at it, and then here comes this big boss to stop you, kind of thing, and then you go into that fight, kind of thing. That's very, very different than an hour-long, cutscene on what you're going to have for the meals for the day, or
what you're going to wear when you go out for dancing tonight.
Yeah,
spend 20 minutes on that,
and unless it's like a Barbie game.
Yeah,
in which case you might be excused from that. But pretty much any other game, no.
Yeah. Now, getting the most out of your mechanics, that I think, as Amir's comment, that's a very interesting kind of slice about this, because we brought up the SKEA earlier, and the SKEA series is long. You can be in a whole the SKEA game in like 20 minutes, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, you literally can.
You get like one of the bad endings, yeah. You can speed run that.
You get the first bad ending in 4 maps.
Yeah. And this is where we kind of talk about kind of like not only kind of measuring out your mechanics and systems, but what it means for somebody who's playing them. And this gets at the heart of progression, that the player needs to always feel like they are making progress. Whether you can, I say this all the time, whether it's, you can measure this in centimeters or miles. The player needs to feel like they are, even if it's like, 0.005% ahead of what they were a second ago. As long as they can keep feeling that, they will play the hell out of your game. And this is what stuff like Ceruleum and SKEA really excel at. That the basic system of these games, or the core gameplay loop, is very basic. It's a turn-based battle. It's, watching units go across the map hitting each other. But it's everything that's tied to that is where that depth comes in. Because
the Sky is one of those games where, I mean, normally when you talk about a RPG or something, grinding's part of it. And if you put too much grinding in it, then it's a slog. If you put not enough grinding in it, then people will complain. You need that happy medium kind of thing. But Disgaea is one of those games that is built around grinding. It's built to make grinding not just fun for like 5 minutes or whatever. And it's because, like, I know, like, when I play, like, you know, Final Fantasy or something, I grind, you know, like, I feel like I'm weak or something. And then I start grinding, and I grind for a good 5-10 minutes kind of thing. And then it's like, wow, I'm stronger now. Now I'm going to go fight that boss kind of thing. And that feels good. But, you know, like, if I had to sit there and grind for, like, an hour or two, I would, you know, be completely taken out of the experience and would not enjoy it.
Yeah.
And if I never had to grind, then I would just feel like, this is too easy. Why am I being able to do this without any kind of effort kind of thing? Where Disgaea, on the other hand, is built specifically for the grind. And they do that by having many different systems that all provide progression. And you're able to choose how you tackle every one of these things, and it's all about the art of min-maxing, or in the case of Disgaea, max-maxing kind of thing, because you just keep on going on everything.
Is max-maxing extreme?
Yes.
Yeah, and
but like you have all these different systems that all tie in together through multiple progression systems, and that's what gives that grind so much fun, because they made the focus on that. They focused the design on that game to making the grind fun, not just for 5 minutes, but for a very long period of time, for hundreds and hundreds of hours, because of all the different progression systems.
And that right there, the progression systems, that is the key to this. That's the difference between playing a regular RPG and saying, okay, to beat this boss, I must spend at minimum 10 hours grinding experience. In Disgaea and some of these other, and some like Ceruleum, it's basically, okay, I need to get stronger. What can I do? Okay, I can go level up my weapon. I can level up a character. I can go into the item world. I can, you know, transmigrate my character to a new class. I can assign new skills. I can do all this kind of stuff, and I am involved in this process. The grinding, or the act of grinding, is like a puzzle. You're trying to figure out how to make this work in as little time as possible. And when you're good at it, it makes it brings you into that. Because, again, like, for you, Shark, and for myself, we've played the games from Nippon Ichi. And when we know how these games work, we can do a lot more in less time than somebody just trying to figure these out on their own or for the first time.
Yeah. And the game we're talking about is Time Ingram is Disgaea. I typed it into my chat over here on my channel. So,
and I will type in Ceruleum for mine as well. Let me make sure I get the right spelling for it, because it's a little weird.
Yeah, so it's Disgaea's name.
True.
But it's where Final Fantasy does not have like it doesn't have all these systems in it. I mean, it certainly has a good bit of systems in it, but it doesn't have all these that are focused around making the grind fun. You know what I mean? They have enough that, you know, it's fun for a few minutes, and then that's it, kind of thing. And where Disgaea is built with all these different progression mechanics to where it is basically all about that, because it's basically grind the game. Because like, you know, like for the last, like I've put probably recently I've put probably about 200, 300 hours into the game in the last like month or two, and through that, I think I have played literally 0 story missions. And I'm like at the very beginning of the game on my current New Game Plus kind of thing. I think I'm on like the 4th or 5th map, and I'm sitting here in these post-game, you know, opened up you know, and I've got like level 4,000, 5,000 characters on several of these things, and like it's nuts because like I could go through the game on the most highest enemy levels kind of thing, and I will one shot the final boss. You know, with not even my strongest character, not my weakest character for sure, but you know, somebody that's, you know, I could take one of my like level 700s or 800s and probably one shot the boss, the final boss.
And this again, like another like counterpoint of this would be open world design, where if you want to level your character up, I hope you enjoy doing the same, you know, climb the tower challenge in all the Assassin's Creed games, or you know, hit every point of interest on this map, repeating the same things. There's no further input by the player. It is just, you know, turning off your brain and doing work for how many hours it takes you to solve it all.
Well, I mean, like they in the sky in Assassin's Creed 1, it was literally just a single path of how to get up the tower. But like when you got into like the deep into the Assassin's Creed 2 series, the Ezio trilogy, when you got into there, then it became there's multiple paths, and maybe you might have to go inside, do this, you know, puzzle that has like somewhat a single solution, sometimes, you know, multiple kind of thing, and you to unlock something to go progress and get to the tower so you can then climb up it kind of thing. And like, you know, there was a lot more variance and everything, but like some of those sections took too long because they were too slow, you know. But it was okay to be slow to a point because it had this mystery to it, this intrigue and everything. Just, you know, I think they milked them a little bit too much on that length on some of them, not all of them. And, you know, in later ones, they kind of went more back down to the generic thing.
And you want to, again, keep the player invested in what is happening. You want them to be able to see a goal that they're aiming for. And what we've been describing for the last, like, 5 minutes is essentially, like, at its most basic level, the whole progression loop of an idle game. That idle games are just along these lines. They're about, okay, I click this thing, now it gives me 10 resources. I click this, now I do 20. And idle design is very fascinating in this regard because it's very much what we saw in something like Loop Hero. Loop Hero is very much of an idle sort. You sit back, you let the character do something. But you impact things with how the world around them responds to it. And that kind of progression, it keeps people invested in it. Even if, an idle gameplay loop is very short. It's literally a second. I click a button, and that's it. But
yeah. Now that I think about it, you've given me an idea for a game. And I might have to pull this one off pretty soon. Because, like, could you imagine an idle game with, like, so many progression routes like Disgaea?
Oh, yeah.
That could be really amazing.
If you haven't seen it yet, there's an idle game called Realm Grinder that is perhaps like one of the most like elevated, like systems heavy idle games I've seen.
What's the name of that one again?
Realm Grinder. It is available on mobile and Steam. That one gets crazy in terms of the stuff that they unlock in it.
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of idle games by any means, but they do have their place, and they can be really entertaining. Like I know I really love the what was the Venture Capitalist one?
Oh yes, Venture Capitalist. And well, one of the forums I visit, they have a thread about all the latest idle games. Every time I look through it, I just curse myself knowing I'm going to be spending like at least 2 weeks on one of these games.
Yeah.
And again, I think to kind of we'll move on to a different point in a second here, but to kind of wrap up this section, idle design kind of gets at the heart of what we talk about in terms of progression. That the player always needs to feel like something is growing, that something meaningful is taking place. And if you can get
a +1 is not really meaningful, at least not in it probably is at low levels, but when you get into higher levels, it's like I do 1 million damage. Now I upgrade, and now I'm doing 1,000,001. Yay! That's not progression.
Yeah. Venture Capitalist is a clicker/idle game.
Yeah.
And they're all like follow that same route. You start by clicking, and then it will go into more idle and more, figuring out the best ways to speed through this. And what I was saying is that if the player feels like something is going forward, then they will keep doing it. As long as, they can keep seeing, things going up. And going up in a meaningful way. And as Shark just said in terms of numbers, that's another very big point. Numbers by themselves is a limited mechanic. Because, going from doing 1 point of damage to 5,000 points of damage, that's big. Going from 6 million points of damage to 6,100,000 points of damage, what did that exactly do? Like, how did that change what I'm doing at that point? And the very best idle games, what they'll do is they will introduce new things that will either mitigate the earlier grind or add in a new form of grinding that, kind of takes your attention over to that.
And there's many different ways that you can do this, but the point is that progression systems are one of those things that adds another element of mechanics that can take your game farther. It adds another tool into your toolbox.
Even like something like Cookie Clicker, like that was kind of like the first game to blow up. What they added eventually was a whole ascension skill tree system that every time you ascend and restart your game, you would get like special, I think, like chocolate chips that you put on a 500 listing perk tree that adds new things for you to do. And one of these days, I need to have a discussion about Clicker Hero versus Clicker Hero 2. Because I feel like Clicker Hero 2 missed the mark in terms of its idle design. Yeah, I don't think the link... Yeah, it looks like YouTube blocked that link for him. But yeah, that's fine. Putting that.
When it comes to idle games, the Venture Capitalist is the only one I've actually been able to get into fully. Like I played a bunch of them, but none of them really made me want to play like that one did. Like I would play them for sometimes longer than I should, because like it's getting to the psychological part of my brain to where it turns it into a job and makes me but forces me to keep on playing kind of thing. Before I'm able to break myself free from it.
Yeah, I have another one to suggest too. NGU Idle. One second. That's kind of like an RPG idle game, and my voice is really dying. Wow. And the developer that's working on NGU Industries, which is supposed to be like Idle Factorio. And that was another one that kind of got very deep in terms of its systems. But ultimately, before we kind of move on to another topic here, when we're talking about like keeping the player invested, you want to give them options. Again, Disgaea, Ceruleum, even something like Factorio and Dyson Sphere Program, which are certainly not idle games. But the allure of playing these games is this idea of, how do I figure this out? And the solution can be many different things based on your own understanding, what you have available. As we saw with Factorio, like when we were playing it on our multiplayer nights, like Shark kept redesigning the assembly line because there were new things to do. There is new forms of optimization. It's the very same thing in Disgaea. When you start playing it, okay, what I can do? I buy a new weapon, my character is stronger. Next, okay, I go in the item world. I now level up my weapons, make that stronger. Okay, what do I do now? I can now upgrade skills. I can change characters. I can put the specialist on my items. And then all of a sudden...
make new characters that are stronger. Yeah. I can reincarnate my characters back to level 1.
Hi, Mike.
Get them boosted stats, and then level them back up, and they're stronger at the same level. I can go into the Senate and make the enemies have higher levels, therefore they hit harder, they have more HP and everything, but they give more EXP. You know, I can go play the story, and I can go through the story and level up. I can also, you know, experience a story kind of thing, and, you know, unlock new story characters that can, you know, help me progress.
There is, again, that sense of progress. There's that sense that you are figuring this out, and it's not just only one way to solve it, because that's what was the issue of a lot of RPGs, that there is nothing else. It's just literally, okay, do you have 20 hours to repeat this same fight to get enough experience? Good, you can move forward. No, you're done. But I do want to talk a little bit more about kind of the macro side of the actual game systems. Anything else regarding kind of like small scale that we didn't touch on? And
not really. No, I can think of anyway.
And I could rant about idle games for another hour, like platformers. And I'm going to try and bug Tomo that if we do talk about Loop Hero, to also talk about idle games in that as well.
Yeah.
But the other side of this, in terms of not wasting the player's time, has to do with the overall mechanics and systems of your game. And what we mean by that is designing mechanics that can keep somebody invested in them, or systems that kind of cut away or remove time wasting. One of the earlier examples of this is the simple act of having an auto sort in an ARPG. Having things that are in place to make your experience more meaningful. And a lot of this, again, really is about seconds of time save. It's almost like, you know, speed run game design in a weird way.
Yeah, it is.
What we're doing, when it works, it cuts away seconds or meaningless seconds of your game.
Of course, this is not important when you're talking about, not really all that important when you're talking about something that only happens like once or twice, you know, kind of thing. But in anything that happens repeatedly,
oh yes,
you need to make that as seamless, fast, and as smooth as possible.
This is why when we talk about UI design, we spend so much time about the main screen. You know, what is the main gameplay interaction screen of your game? Is it, you know, like an action game? We have, you know, the health bar up here, the enemy health bar over there. Is this a 4X game where, you know, we have your major resources along the top, maybe a mini map down here? I'm doing like the John Madden thing with my fingers on my camera right now. But
you need that program where you can just take and draw on your screen.
That's what I need. Just like have it follow my finger and like draw stuff with it.
Well, it works on like a tablet or something.
Okay, maybe that'll be the next upgrade. But the point is that the more somebody is interacting with a specific system of your game, the more refined, the more intuitive that system needs to be. One of the things that kills me, and you guys have seen when I play a lot of indie games, if the simple act of interacting with your core gameplay loop is annoying or it's wasting my time, my interest in that game plummets. If it's keeping me invested, I will spend hours doing that. But if it's annoying me, you know, 20 minutes, 10 minutes in, I'm ready to move on.
Yeah. And the number one way to annoy Josh is with UI.
Oh, yes. UI, UX are my major pain points when I see them in games.
Although, the number one way to make Josh suffer, but keep on playing infinitely, is by making the game annoyingly hard.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to annoy my audience, have no volume sliders and have the same music repeat for hours on end, like that Dragonborn game.
Like a lot of the games. I think that annoys you too. That's not just us.
Yeah, but at least I can solve that by taking my headset off. I have a life hack for that one. But
yeah, do you remember that one game where that one level kept on having that one song play, and you could tell exactly where it repeated?
Mm-hmm. I forget the game.
You were like, oh no! Like every time,
mm-hmm.
like, not again.
Oh yes.
I forget what that game was. I had footage that I edited down. You remember? And I sent that to you.
Yeah, but I do not remember. That was a while ago.
I need to finish that.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a meme for the channel.
There you go. And again, things that annoy the player are going to make it feel like they're wasting their time. A big thing about a lot of kind of like 4X or strategy games is forcing the player to spend a lot of time not playing the game. Having to store an inventory by hand. Having to go through each exact character and make sure, okay, who has all their equipment on right.
And that's the real downside when we talk about Magic the Gathering with specifically white and blue builds. Because their whole strategy is make the other player not play the game. The blue is just like, yeah, you played a card, counterspell. You played a card, counterspell. You played a card, counterspell. You played a card, counterspell.
Good.
Well, it looks like you didn't play any cards, and white's like, oh, you played a card? Well, I'm removing that card. You played a card? Well, I'm removing that card. You played a card? Well, I'm removing that card. And then when you combine the two, it just gets even more annoying kind of thing. And they are, the white and blue in general, especially in the last time I played, were the most annoying things you could ever play against. And they were the meta. And they were sticking at the meta. And because the number one way to win a card game is just prevent the other player from playing the card game,
Yep.
And like I have a bone to pick with Magic the Gathering on that.
Mm-hmm.
A big one. It's like there's supposed to be a control decks. You're not supposed to control the other player from playing.
And this again is that issue when it comes to these kinds of interactions, that the player should be able to focus on the core gameplay of your title. Now, again, there are some very weird exceptions, like going back to the Skea, where the core gameplay of the tactical combat is not really the focus of that game. The focus, again, is on the grinding and the systems that go with it. The same
progression system.
Yeah.
All of the tons and tons of progression systems.
The same for Ceruleum as well. What you want to avoid, again, is the core gameplay being frustrating. And again, frustration can come in many shapes and form. The example from the Gundam game that Shark mentioned earlier, with, it has like a 30 to 40 second cutscene every time we have to go to a new turn. When I played...
No, it wasn't a new turn. It was every time you killed the enemy.
Oh, God.
And then when you went to a new turn, their screen transition was like, player turn, ended. Whoop. Enemy turn, begin.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that was a good time waster right there.
I love it. It says, okay, player, unit 1 start, unit 2, unit 1 end, unit 2 start, unit 2 end. Because that doesn't pad time at all.
No.
And again, anything that is adding time, like you don't want to add time that the player has no interaction with.
Well, it's fine to have no interaction when it comes to certain parts, like story.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to have no interaction, you have to occupy the player's time, in a good, positive way. Again, not back to my example, talking about, what you're going to eat for supper for the next 3 hours. Not a good, But if
the player can't skip
that mystery and murder and all this other stuff, or anything entertaining like that, then yeah. Because I mean, when you look at a movie, that's what a movie is. It's at least a good movie. It's an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours of entertaining time spent not interacting. But the thing is bad movies waste your time because they're showing you uninteresting things that have nothing to do with anything. And so if you're going to take interaction out of it, you better damn well be sure that you're entertaining during that time, because if you're not, then you're killing it. And by it, I mean your game.
Yep. And when somebody is starting to feel like nothing is happening, or that it's going to take so long to see so little, they're going to end up just giving up on this game. It's also why you have to be really careful with difficulty. That for a lot of people, if they hit that wall too early and it just seems like, okay, if the only way I'm going to be able to do this is spend, 10 hours getting good, or, 20 hours of grinding, they may just say to themselves, I don't want to invest this time, I'm out.
Refund.
And again, this is why, kind of like this whole point of our discussion for today, another reason why you don't want to waste somebody's time is they can refund your games now. If you can't hook somebody in 5 to 10 minutes of playing, they can refund it. And they can refund it very easily now, unless they're on consoles.
Yeah, in which case they can't refund it. And that's not a promotion to go put your game on console.
Oh.
That's a promotion to, make your games entertaining, engaging, and you really got to hook the player in the first 5 minutes. And then you got to hook them again before the 15-minute point. And then you've got to hook them again before the 30-minute point. And then you've got to hook them again before the hour point. And you want to periodically hook them so that they keep on playing.
And this is also why, when we did our talk about game completion ratings, why very few people, or why very few games, the majority of their fan base actually finishes it.
Yeah, I mean, you oftentimes have people who play this 100-hour game that only played the first 30 minutes to an hour.
And this is actually a very important point for developers, because I see developers on Twitter make this mistake. That they assume that copies sold is a direct correlation to the quality of their game. And no, it is not.
If it is, then EA is the best game. They make the best games ever.
Everybody should just give up.
Yeah, just make an EA game, with all the loot boxes.
Yeah,
because that's where the best games are. Best games are in the world are EA games that are horribly grindy, have no real depth to their mechanics, and are Skinner boxes with loot boxes and
you forgot
all
surprise
kinds of
mechanics.
Huh?
You need surprise mechanics too. You forgot that.
Yeah, surprise mechanics.
And here's why this is the case. One thing, a lot of games were released over the last decade before there was a refund policy in place. So a lot of people bought these games, thinking, oh, it's an amazing game, PewDiePie covered it, a Markiplier, whatever, played it, go, I hate this game, but I can't do anything about it, so, into the infinite backlog it goes, never to be seen again. The developer will see that their game maybe sold 100,000, 200,000 copies. How many of those people actually play through that game? And this is why when I was doing that talk about, monitoring achievements and completion ratings is such an important point. Because if you have, 20,000 copies of your game sold, but everyone only played 5-10 minutes of it, that means your gameplay was probably not the best. And what ends up happening is that you're getting the wrong feedback. You're thinking to yourself, yes, all these people bought this game, they must have loved it. Let me design my next game the same exact way. And then what ends up happening? You get maybe a 16th of those game sales on your second game, and you will have no idea why that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen that happen a lot from indie developers. That they'll put out one game, it will get moderate to decent reviews, or, game sales. They'll do the exact same thing or something similar for game number 2, and it just nosedives. Because they didn't learn about all the pain points and all the time wasting in their game, and people wised up about it.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you think about the play rate of percentage of people that achieve a certain achievement that takes probably about, I don't know, let's say an hour to get to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're able to get 43% of people in an hour in.
That's okay. I'm trying to think how we would measure this, because there are games like
Well, why I'm asking that is because that is roughly the time it takes to make it to the first boss in the old word of the day, Chromasia, and it was 43.1% people that got that achievement. So it's about an hour to get into, to the, and I got 43% to get into the hour in.
Mm-hmm. That is a decent metric, but you also have to keep track, again, of, I don't know, I think if you lose that amount of people within an hour, that is still also some signs of trouble as well.
Yeah, well, we already know what the trouble is. Yeah. The art aesthetics of it.
And again, you will always have drop-off. And again, this is segueing into another topic, but just very quickly. You will always have player churn. It will always happen. There's no way to truly avoid it. There's no game out there that has 100% completion rate. It's never going. Yeah.
Not until the game comes out.
Okay, there you go. There's your marketing plug right there. But what you want is to stem that bleed for as long as possible. So that it goes, let's say you start the game, you're at 100. First, an hour, maybe you're at 96. The next hour, maybe you're at 87. What you don't want... What was that?
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Right there. I don't think even Ori did that good.
No. What you don't want is to go, okay, we started the game at 100, an hour in, we're at 43. That's not good. And
I think it's still not bad either, because I think probably 90% of Steam games don't even get that good.
Yeah.
Even higher.
But what we've seen is that developers who do end up making really amazing games know not to waste the player's time. They know to do everything they can to keep their game as attractive as possible for as long as possible. Now again, there will always come that point where you're just going to be left with your hardcore fans. What you want is to keep as many people invested for as long as you can. This is why we say
the ideal rate is that the amount of players that you're bleeding off over time, you're gaining players in at a rate that's higher than that, especially on like a live service.
Yeah, for multiplayer, that's its own little story. That's its own special thing. What again you want to do is you want to try and understand how far do I want people to play my game? Like, what do I expect? Do I expect everyone to just literally give up at the first boss fight? Do I expect them to get to, let's say let's say 5 hours in, I unlock city building concepts, or I unlock a new game system, and that's what I really want people to get to. Well, then, you need to make sure then that everything up until that point is motivating somebody to keep playing. You want to avoid, again, that idea of, okay, you're going to do the same thing for 30 hours, and then the game really gets good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't want to say the real game starts at hour 30.
Mm-hmm. And I decided for the heck of it to look up Spelunky 2 again and see where its rating is at. So its completion rate is now at 14.7%, which ironically, or funny enough, that's actually better than it was like 2 to 3 months ago. But it's still, the rate for getting to Cosmic Ocean is 3.5% of the fan base. Now again though, they may have designed to assume that, okay, we don't expect the majority of our people to get to the Cosmic Ocean. But you should at least have some metric for how far you want somebody to play your game.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
And that goal should definitely be a lot longer than 2 hours.
Yep. And you know why we say 2 hours? Because that's the refund policy.
Mm-hmm.
If people are hating your game within an hour or even 20 minutes in, here's the point about, this is kind of like our grand statement for tonight. People aren't stuck with bad games anymore, or games that waste their time.
Unless you're on console.
Yeah, it depends, right? That's the other line that we're using. Mm-hmm. And if you annoy them, if you frustrate them, they don't have to stick around anymore. And this is why what we've been saying for the longest time is that game length does not equal game quality. And in many ways, it's better to have, a mind-blowing, amazing, 3-hour game versus a 20-hour, it's just okay game these days.
Yeah. And you'd rather have a amazing, mind-blowing 1-hour game than a middling, 2,000-hour game.
Yeah. And again, going back to what we said about roguelike design, the beauty of roguelikes, or the best ones, are that it is technically like a 20 to 40 minute game. It's an amazing 20 to 40 minute game that can be replayed again and again and again. So 40 minutes turns into 10 hours of 20 to 40 minute runs. Yep. And the player keeps feeling like they're getting something out of it.
Until they run out to that point where the mechanics have worn on them.
Yep. And that is, again, like why I say there's no such thing as infinite replayability. If you don't add new stuff to your game, there is a shelf life on your mechanics. Again, the beauty of procedural generation and roguelike design is that shelf life can be 500 hours. But it will eventually happen without new content.
Well, there can be infinite gameplay. It just requires infinite content.
Yeah, just have the developer work on the game for the next 100 years, and you'll be good. And then when they die, upload them into a robot, and then they'll work on it.
Yeah.
And that's the other tricky thing about this, what Soren just said.
I don't think so. Because the thing is, if the game's only 3 hours, then if you blew their mind for those 3 hours, kind of thing, they'll be more than happy paying $15 for that. And now, if it was just good and or so kind of thing, they will be on that refund button.
Yeah, and again, trying to figure out what makes your game good like that is its own topic in of itself. Like, if we look at something like Gone Home, for instance, when Gone Home was released, I am pretty sure it was priced like $24, $25 at launch. Right now, it's down to $15. And you have to be very mindful, again, about why somebody is playing your game. as we said, you can completely, 2 hours, such an amazing game. It's like the best damn game somebody's ever played. They would be more than willing to give you $15, $20, $30 for that. But figuring out if your game can get that far is a topic in of itself.
And here's the other point to what Soren said. Is, like, if your 3-hour game is so, they're not refunding at the 3-hour mark. They're refunding at the, hour or 30-minute mark.
They may refund the 2-minute mark.
Yeah, or even the 2-minute mark. Now, if it's good, maybe they might make it to the whole 3 hours, but maybe not. Maybe they'll refund at the hour and a half. Now, if it's great, they'll probably make it all the way through the 3 hours. And they might be, depending on how you ended it, they might be like, pissed that, you kind of abruptly ended it kind of thing. But if you had a good, solid, conclusive ending to it, they might be really happy with that. Now, if it was amazing and mind-blowing for 3 hours, they're not even going to think twice about refunding it. They're going to be like, no way in hell are you ever taking this game away from me. Can I download a second copy, back it up to my hard drive, so that if something goes wrong, if Steam goes south, I still have this game. They're starting to plan for, Steam to close down, to still keep your game kind of thing.
And replayability or replay factor is kind of part of this topic, but I think it's a little too big to get into now. Like, that could be saved for a future talk about getting somebody to come back to a game like that. Trying to think there's anything else. We'll probably wrap things up like the next 15, 20 minutes, give or take. But again, like going back to Shark's analogy about the toolbox, that the more you can put into it for somebody to play around with, the more they're going to be able to get out of that investment.
And that's where a lot of rogues really tend to accelerate, because they put a massive toolbox in there, generally, because you have, if they do a good job kind of thing, they'll make a really big toolbox to where there's so many different mechanics and so many different ways to combo the mechanics together, so that, basically, it's not just that you have a hammer or a saw kind of thing, but you have a hammer or summer, kind of thing, and you could combine your tools to, into new tools kind of thing, and all this other stuff. And, basically multiplying the amount of tools that are in your toolbox kind of thing. And that's where rogues really tend to accelerate, if they're done right, by having a massive toolbox.
And also why a lot of colony sim style games do a lot with like a very basic system, because it's about exploring how everything is connected to each other. Oxygen Non-Clue would be a really good example. You have systems for how temperature works, how gas and liquids move around your base, and
they're all actual physics systems that are, they're all fluid physics systems, even the gas one, because the gas is counted as a fluid.
Yeah.
And basically it's how all these fluids interact with each other, and depending on what you do, can vastly change everything, because, what works in one map will not work in the other map. Maybe something similar to that will work, but you need to take it, tweak it, turn it around, because as is, it won't work.
Yep. And when you can get your systems in place for that, it will lead to so much value for people wanting to play. And why like colony sim style games usually do price at a higher premium, because people know that you're not going to see everything in an hour in these games, or even in 5 hours.
The issue is, though, is just having all these systems and everything in there, having that big toolbox is not enough.
Yeah.
You have to have aesthetics and, all kinds of other stuff, and those mechanics have to be fun. That toolbox has to be a fun toolbox and not an agonizing one.
Yep, and again, that's about wasting somebody's time. That you can have the deepest, most involving and complicated game out there, but if it takes 20 hours and watching 15 additional hours of videos and guides to even figure it out, most people aren't going to do that. You will, of course, have, your hardcore fans, the ones who will say, oh, you did everything perfectly, don't change anything, your game is fine. When you're sitting at, 50 reviews on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
And
you'll have those people no matter what game you make.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to ignore a lot of the things they say.
And this is, again, why UI UX is such a big point about this. That making it so that more people can play your game is not dumbing it down.
I just thought of something.
Hmm?
You think that's the reason why adventure games went the way of the dodo, basically? Is because they, instead of innovating, they listened to that small minority that was saying your games are perfect, don't change them. And they just repeatedly not changed them. And then just, now it's just that small diehard fan base that, and in the second you try to change them, the second they're gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe. And we've seen genres that fail to, innovate and reinvent themselves. And again, this is another topic we can certainly talk about with developers who are too, slavishly trying to copy older games like that. That because it's old, it must be good. But
yeah, that's the truth of everything,
Mm-hmm.
Like the old solar clothes dryers, the best thing ever.
Yeah.
The
first car is perfect.
You go out there and you take and you put your clothes on there with a couple of those little clamps, and you let them sit out there. You'll let somebody's lawnmower and clippings just blow right against them. It'll get that nice minty fresh cut grass smell. It's just perfect in every way. It's the old way is always better, right?
Mm-hmm. And it is part of the issue that we see about these games that improve is this idea of trying to cut out all the fat that makes these games annoying to get through. There's a reason why Stardew Valley succeeded so well. It was the very best possible interpretation of the Harvest Moon formula. This is what, old school Blizzard worked so well at. They sat down and said, okay, this is the stuff people want, this is the stuff people don't want. Let's put more of the stuff people do want into these games, and it will be a better game.
Mm-hmm. And everybody just got to see a backdoor dealing in Josh's stream.
Yeah, I was passing things around there. Off-screen passing. Yep, and to Board Fans' comment there, there's a little bit of a rant I want to have of the whole, MMO classic craze that people are going on with, WoW and some of these other ones, about, just how weird that is.
Mm-hmm. I think part of it is because some of the updates really screwed things up, but, not all of them did, And, the thing is WoW should have addressed those when they happened, rather than having to remake it back to the original, unupdated. They should have been sure that all the updates were good as they made them, and nothing broke another thing or made it useless.
And as an interesting point, one of the things that we've said about kind of how game design has improved is that while one area where developers or newer developers can kind of upstage older design is by making it far more intuitive and, again, less time wasting. It's, again, when we look at games...
And more polished.
Yeah. when we look at some like the better examples of games, especially from independent developers over the last 10 years, like the ones that have stood out, yes, they may have borrowed or been inspired by an older game, but they will go their own way, and B, try to refine this in a way to make it even better. Like the example that we use, between Slay the Spire and Monster Train. Monster Train letting you have boss updates as to what the final boss is going to be. That's a big improvement over Slay the Spire. Now, does that invalidate Slay the Spire? No. It's just a case of somebody saying, okay, this was something that was annoying. Let's not do that for our version.
Yeah, that's what caused me to bounce off of Slay the Spire. I put, 2 or 3 hours into it, and then I got to where that slammed me in the face, and I was like, yeah, I'm done. No more. Okay. But with Monster Train, I put tens of hours into it, if not, a lot more.
And this is kind of like what we're seeing with the whole Valheim explosion. That a lot of people, nobody's telling me that Valheim is, the best possible game ever made. What they're saying is that it's the best version of this design. What was that?
It has the least amount of pain points.
Exactly. It's the most refined. It gets away. It removes a lot of the annoyances of that genre and leaves what works. And in many cases, that can be enough to have an outstanding game.
But when I look at it, it's like I don't see any reason to play that.
Yeah. And again, the point is, though, you have to understand why is somebody playing your game. Just throwing mechanics and systems in place doesn't automatically make it better. This again goes back to the Disgaea example. That with Disgaea, they know how these systems work and interact with each other. They could have thrown in, a dating sim minigame, a first-person shooter point, or a stealth section that you have to go to every time you want to create a new character. Does that add depth? Yes. Is it actually improving your game? Probably not.
It's probably downgrading your game. Like that horror game that then turned into a first-person shooter.
Which one was it? There's been a lot of them that did that.
Remember, it was the horror game that was then a puzzle game, and then a horror game, and then back to a puzzle game, and then at the end it turned into a first-person shooter.
Oh, it wasn't the Puppet Combo one, right?
I don't remember. But you were constantly during that whole thing saying, "This is not a horror game. This is not a horror game." Where's the horror?
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of them that I said that on.
But this one was the one you were like, oh, it's a gun. I bet I won't be able to use it. I wish I would be able to use it. And then you finally got to use it at the end in the first person scenario. And then you're like, oh, God, this is so horrible. I was like, well, you wanted to use it. You got
Anyone can remember which game that was. Please let me know. Because I've played so many of these horror games that have done that.
It was not too long ago. I think it was about 6 months ago or so when you played that.
6 months? That's like 3 years of my time.
Which is a very long time since you've been around since the early thousands.
But I think we'll probably begin to wrap things up. It probably was an indie game.
I think it was. Pretty sure it was an indie game.
But if anyone can think of that name, let me know in the comments. But I think I'm about out of points to discuss here. So anything that you want to end our discussion on for tonight?
I'm
going to look through my...
Getting rid of pain points means stop wasting players' time, essentially. So if you're stop wasting time, then you're getting rid of pain points. And getting rid of pain points is good. You don't necessarily want your animations to be super short kind of thing. But the time that they are, there needs to be enough entertainment value in that time kind of thing. Like the Gundam one was really entertaining to watch and everything. But the fact is I would not want to see that 5 billion times.
And make it unskippable, too.
Yeah, that would stop being entertaining after, like, once, kind of thing. Now, if they had and they may have a shortened version, but, you know, I didn't get that far into the video because the video wasted so much time, and I have a villain that there's not.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, you know, now if they had a shortened version that was like, you know, 5-10 seconds that would play every time after that, that would be good. You know what I mean? But, you know, having the same thing, watching the same thing over and over and over again, if it's long kind of thing, is not entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nobody wants to watch a unentertaining movie over and over and over again. Most people do not want to watch the original Twilight 5,000 times. I don't think there's anybody that wants to watch Twilight 5,000 times. Even the diehard fans, I don't think want to watch the first one 5,000 times. Maybe 100 times, but not 5,000.
Oh, Shark's going after the Twilight fans now.
I've watched that movie a few times. But the fact is nobody wants to watch that movie 5,000 times. I don't think there's literally anybody that wants to watch that movie 5,000 times because that's a lot of watching and a lot of time. Now, you know, would diehard fans watch it, you know, 20 or 30 times? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Would most people want to watch it more than once? Most definitely not. But would anybody watch it 5,000 times by choice? Probably not. Not even probably one person on the face of this planet. And if you're playing the same animation 5,000 times in your game,
mm-hmm.
it's got to be really short and really entertaining during that short time.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. Like this guy is really good at giving you really entertaining, you know, animations to where they just go absolutely crazy, where your character jumps up and then slices and, you know, everything blows up kind of thing.
Slice the moon.
Or they pick up the land the enemies are standing on and they chunk it into the sun or anything like that. And they're really short. Well, they're not really short. They're normally like, you know, anywhere between like 5 to 10 seconds kind of thing, you know,
mm-hmm.
or you know, some of them are even shorter than that. But like the insane ones take longer, but they have a lot more entertainment value to them. So they're able to hold that interest of you. So, you know, the fact is you have to have enough entertainment value for the time you're consuming, and also you have to value your player's time, even if it is something really amazing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make something really amazing, really long, and play it 5 billion times.
Yeah, and even with this example, they allow you to speed up those animations, and even just turn them off.
Not the first one.
Yeah, probably not the first one, but I know that was added in the later ones. And you always want to look, like, again, this is kind of like the, you know, speedrun strats for designing your game. You want to look at anything that can make your game snappier, can make it quicker to play.
Mm-hmm. And like we said, you know, an animation that plays 5 billion times, if you take 0.1 seconds off of it, you just shorten the length of your game by like probably about 2,000 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing because your game length does not equal game quality. Game length equals, you know, the longer it is, the more player follow-up you're going to get. And the more player follow-up you're going to get, the less your game is going to be, you know, recognized for actually being good.
Mm-hmm. And just because people buy your game doesn't mean that it automatically succeeded.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Ori is a great example of having a very, very slow fall-off rate.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people really played really far into Ori. And part of that is the aesthetics. Aesthetics will play into that because you don't want to waste your players' time with bad art.
Yeah, and UI UX as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, people aren't going to stick around. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, they will come back to bite you in your next game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, I think, part of the reason why we see many developers who have really solid or really impressive first game showings tend to fail in their second or third game. Because they repeat the mistakes they didn't know at the time, and they don't have kind of the, new game excuse anymore.
Yeah. It's the difference, that's the reason why I like most indies that become success fell on their first game.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even their second and third and fourth and fifth games. All depends on how long it takes you to learn the things, the issues that happened, as well as how many things of that apply to your next game kind of thing. Because like if your first game is a tactical RPG and then you make a first person shooter for your next one, then not too many things are going to cross over there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're having to, it's a second first game. You know what I mean? Essentially at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And, you learned some stuff, but you did not learn you did not learn enough of that applies to the genre change.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you're changing a genre, but it's a similar genre, then a lot of stuff will copy over, come over.
Mm-hmm.
A turn-based game, like a turn-based tactical RPG, a lot of stuff will translate over into a turn-based CCG. Because the fact is they're both turn-based, they're both very strategy-focused, they're both, there's many aspects that are the same between them. The fact is the main difference between the two is one, you're moving, units and choosing attacks on them, and the other is you're moving cards that already have assigned attack to them, but then you chose those attacks earlier when you're building your deck. So there's a lot in common that crosses over between them.
Mm-hmm. And again, why for a lot of developers who try to experiment and switch genres, that if you don't learn what are the pain points of a genre, you're going to end up making a worse example of it. And nobody wants to play a worse example of a game that they like.
Yep.
And that is its own talk, easily.
Would you like to play a game that is exactly like Mario but worse?
Well, I think a whole lot of indie developers tried to answer that one.
I think they already answered it for you.
Mm-hmm. And to the MMO discussion in the chat, that, again, there's a difference between not liking something modern because it removes stuff, and not liking it, simply because you can't see beyond, the older ways.
Yeah. I think that people who are stuck in their ways need to get to open themselves up to new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I feel like, game designers, if they realize they put something in there that made all the old stuff worse, they need to fix it. Right then and there, not, 30 years later by just undoing everything they've done in the last, 25 years.
Mm-hmm. But I think with that, let us wrap things up. Okay. I don't think I'm going to be saying that because I know how people can trap you with saying phrases.
Trap.
Yeah.
Oh, black.
Mm-hmm. But I think we'll wrap things up for our show this week. So if you'd like to continue this discussion, please feel free to join our respective Discords. If you have a topic you'd like to suggest for a future show, please let us know, as we're always looking for new things to discuss. You can follow me on Twitter at GWBicer.
And you can find me over at Nexus Games INC1 on Twitter. But like Josh said, join both of our Discords. There's lots of content there, for, there's a lot of talks about game dev and stuff on both of our Discords. There's a lot more, talking about games over on his side, and there's a lot more talking about my game that I'm making over on my Discord. You can come over there and learn about Neon Continuum, and, which hopefully will be the next big thing.
Mm-hmm. And if you have an indie game you'd like us to review your store page and provide you with some help with marketing, we have our Thursday show Indie Inquiries starting around 3:30. And these live shows are held Sundays between 4 start at 4:30. ET.
Yeah, and you can come over to my channel and subscribe. You can be, we're 9 subscribers away from 50. How many subscribers are you at?
I think we're at 72 or something. Or 7,000 something.
Just 72? That's how you're at, just 72.
Yeah, just 72 people.
I think you got a little bit more than that.
All right.
But definitely smash the like button, lick the smash button, and smash button.
All right. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, everybody, take care.